What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and today we've got to talk about that Nintendo Switch 2 Direct. Yes, we have finally kicked off the next generation of Nintendo, and while that presentation was great, I do have some concerns about what type of Nintendo we're going to get heading into the next generation. But let's just go through all of it and give my thoughts. So they open on Mario Kart World, but first let's talk about these three new dudes that presented the Switch 2 and all of its games. I don't know how I feel about these guys. This is kind of the same thing we got in the Switch 1, where we didn't really know who Takahashi and Koizumi were, but I just gotta say, Takahashi and Koizumi have more aura than these three. They just do. We'll see if we get Takahashi back in June, or if these guys are the faces of the Switch 2 era for Nintendo, but it'll take some getting used to. On a serious note, we started with Mario Kart World, which, man, we'll get into the price discussion in a second, but my goodness, this game looks tremendous. I said in my predictions video that my hopiest of hopes was that Mario Kart would turn into one big connected world that you drive through. But I said, no way Nintendo is going to do that. And here they are doing exactly that for Mario Kart World. And you look at the map they show in the trailer, it is huge. There are just so many little details, so many things to see in this big, vast world, so many different environments and tracks. Everything is just bigger and better in this Mario Kart game, which has me just stoked for it. I mean, it feels like a reinvention of Mario Kart. People wondered, myself included, how could Mario Kart go from Mario Kart 8 Deluxe? How could it improve on what seemed like the perfect Mario Kart game? But clearly, we saw the answer. And the thing that excites me the most is that there's got to be some big single-player element to this. If they spent all the time to make this a big map that you can explore freely, surely there's something more to that on the single-player story kind of side. So I can't wait to hear more. We're getting a Direct in 2 weeks on this game, and I'll also be making a video just gushing about it because, again, price aside, this game looks incredible. But it's hard to avoid the conversation about that price and about how apparently this game is going to be $80. Now, because Nintendo didn't mention this in the video proper, in the Direct proper, we don't really know the full details. There's some rumors that maybe the digital version will be $70. Some people think the digital version will be $90. Some people think they're all going to be $80. Everyone's kind of all over the place right now. But I think one thing is clear, is that Nintendo knows that they can charge more money for these games coming off of a really successful Switch 1. I think they are getting a little cocky. They are getting a little headstrong after what was one of the most impressive and successful console runs we've ever seen. I mean, $80 for a game is absurd. We had just started to get used to $70, and here we go with a $10 increase on the price. It seems like DK, which again we'll get to in a second, will be $70, which I was willing to accept. Right? $70 for these top-end, big AAA games, I'm fine with. I've always been fine with it. This kind of $60 price has been the norm for so long. If these super huge experiences are going to be $10 more, okay. But it's clear that, like the old adage, if you give them a mile, they'll go across the whole yard or whatever. That's not the saying at all. Point is, clearly these executives were not prepared to stop at $70 in terms of raising the price. It's just going to keep getting higher. I mean, I'm sure GTA is going to be $100 now, and then what, is 3D Mario $110? Sooner rather than later, we're going to be paying $200 for each new game that comes out. I'm just kind of dooming about that reality that could happen eventually, right? This idea that these games are just going to keep getting more expensive as the years go on. And I get it, game prices have remained stable year over year until recently, but that doesn't make it hurt less when you take that stability away. Look, if it comes out that this game is $70 digital, I'll be a little less mad. It'll just make me switch to all digital gaming. I'll be honest, I'll just be a digital Nintendo gamer, which is what they want, right? They make more money off of digital games, and there were a few other things in this Direct that leaned on the digital side and embraced the digital side of their strategy for the Switch 2. So if it's a $70 digital game and they're saying, okay, if you want the physical version, you got to pay $10 more, it's still bad. I still don't like that practice, but at least I'd kind of understand it. As it stands now, $80 across the board seems a little egregious. Even if Mario Kart World is worth that, right? It's probably going to be worth $80 or more, right? On whatever scale you want to use, hours per dollar, or just how good the game is going to be. It's probably going to be worth that price tag, but I'm sure Nintendo is going to release an $80 game in a year that's not going to be worth that price tag, right? I just think this is a dangerous precedent to set for Nintendo heading into the rest of this generation. It's a little bit like the PS3. Sony was coming off of the PS2, which was the most successful console generation of all time and still is, and they got a little big for their britches and had that really high price tag for the console and didn't have a lot of games at launch, and they stumbled out of the gate because of it. Now, this is kind of the opposite of the PS3 in that the games are super expensive, but the console isn't a crazy amount of money, I would say, for what we're getting. And they do have games. They have Mario Kart at launch, they have DK a month later. But I just think Nintendo is riding a fine line here, and it might not end well for them, at least if they're expecting to match the success of the Switch 1. I don't think this is going to have a huge impact on sales or anything, but I think it could have an impact, and for a console they want to have a huge launch with, that could be a bit of a damper on their hopes and expectations for the Switch 2. So, I don't know, I'm kind of in a wait-and-see mode with this whole pricing situation right now, but as it stands, disappointing, for sure. We then got a reveal of what the C button does. It is called Game Chat, and it's voice chat. So Nintendo, welcome to 2014. We finally have voice chat integrated into the system. Look, it's obviously a big deal for Nintendo. This is the first time they've ever embraced something like this without a stupid phone app to do it. It's just, they act like it's the most incredible thing in the world, and it's like, we've had this for a decade, Nintendo, but I'm glad they're finally embracing it. There is this feeling in this direct of this kind of being a different Nintendo, from integrated voice chat to the specs that they really went in detail on, which we'll get to. It feels like a more modern Nintendo, a more serious Nintendo in terms of the hardware, and I do appreciate that, even if, you know, there were some other parts of the new Nintendo that I didn't quite like in terms of the pricing. Regardless, I'm glad it's here. It will make playing games with friends on the Switch 2 infinitely better than the Switch 1, and that's a good thing. Another good thing, game sharing, which got announced. It's kind of like the DS system. Everyone's saying that, but it's what comes to mind, right? You only need one copy of the game, and you can play it with a few friends who don't have their own copy. That's cool. It's another good thing that I feel like should have never went away on the DS, but I'm glad it's back, and that is definitely a W for Nintendo. Nintendo then went into detail about the system itself and the specs, and they went into a lot more detail than I think people were expecting. We heard some rumors about a 120Hz screen, and I was expecting them to use some silly name like HD Motion or something to describe the effect of 120 frames per second, but they just said 120 frames per second. It's a 120 FPS HDR vivid LCD screen. And man, I think this is a game changer. This screen is going to be such a big deal. I don't think people realize how big of a deal that's going to be, and you're not really going to understand it until you have it in your hands and you compare it to the experience on the Switch 1. But 120 frames per second, if a lot of games can target that number, is going to make a world's difference. I did see the Prime 4, when it targets 120 frames per second in performance mode, only hits 720p, so that is going to be a little disappointing in that it doesn't seem like 1080p 120 FPS is going to be achievable for every single game, or maybe even most games. But just having a 120 FPS option is really cool, and I don't know how essential it is to have HDR on a small screen like the Switch 2, but it definitely will make the experience better, so that's also really cool to see. The console is going to have 256 gigabytes of internal storage, which is another really nice thing to see. I was expecting them to cheap out in this regard, but they didn't. 256 gigabytes isn't the most in the world, but for Nintendo, who seems to keep their game sizes down compared to their counterparts in the industry, that's a significant amount of storage. 4K resolution is a part of the Switch 2, which is going to be awesome to see. This presentation was the first direct to stream in 4K for Nintendo, which is pretty wild, and obviously all the trailers are in 4K as well. That's so nice because you get a great look at these games without YouTube compression and all that stuff. They're so clean, they're so smooth, and obviously it's going to be awesome to have Nintendo games in 4K. It's going to be a world's difference from the Switch, which sometimes didn't even hit 1080p in docked mode. Now it's going to hit 4K at times. Incredible. They also showed a brief glimpse of the UI, and it looked the exact same. So I know that disappointed some people. I like the Switch's UI. It's simple, it's snappy. Maybe they'll add folders or something, that'd be nice, but I didn't really need a new UI. I know a lot of people are very disappointed by that. We then got into some games. First, the Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour, which is a tech demo, but you have to buy it. Okay. Next. I could not care less about that. I'm sorry. It should be a pack-in game. Another just like, what are we doing here, Nintendo? But that's more like normal. What are we doing here, Nintendo? Charging for what should be a pack-in game. That's kind of standard business with them. That feels like every generation we have a game exactly like that from Nintendo. So it's almost comforting in that way. We then got Nintendo Switch 2 Edition games revealed, which we heard about on their website about a week ago, but I think this is pretty exciting. Not only are these Switch 1 games going to look better, but they're going to have more content as well. It's weird to me because some of these games have huge amounts of content added, and some of them just don't have any. I wonder if the price is going to be different. I wonder how that's going to break down because, for example, Kirby and the Forgotten Land has a whole new expansion, which I am super hyped about. That's coming out August 28th. I can't wait to dig into that again. And that's a game that needed a bit of a boost because that would drop frames consistently on the Switch. And then Mario Party Jamboree is getting a whole new side mode with the Nintendo Switch camera that they announced. All sorts of new mini games and modes for that game. But then games like Prime 4 and Legend ZA and Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom seem to just be upscaled and they run better and the load times are shorter, which is appreciated, especially for a game like Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom, which can have pretty egregious loading times at certain points. But it's interesting to me that it is kind of inconsistent in how much content they're adding, but it does also make me excited that maybe we could get DLC for other games like Mario Wonder or Pikmin 4 in the form of Nintendo Switch 2 Edition games. Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are both dropping on launch for the Switch 2, which is pretty fun. I think I'll try out Breath of the Wild again. I've been wanting to replay it, so this is a good opportunity to kind of do that. And those two games are included with NSO, which is really nice. So you don't have to pay for the upgrade there. And yes, you can upgrade it. It's not that you have to purchase the game again, which would have been terrible. You can just buy an upgrade pass, which we don't know the price of. I'm hoping it's only like $10. That would be acceptable to me, but given how some of the other pricing in this direct was, I could see it being like $30 or something, which would be really disappointing. The next announcement was Drag X Drive, coming in summer of 2025. I like the representation in this game, right? It's wheelchair guys playing basketball. I thought that was pretty cool, but in terms of the game itself, I just can't find myself getting interested in it. I guess it's the EPD4 MouseCon game, and you know, it serves its purpose for that because you're using two MouseCons to control the game, but I wasn't too interested in this one. It looks so drab. I don't know. It just doesn't look lively. It doesn't seem fun to look at. I don't know. Maybe they'll touch it up by summer, but for now, I'm not feeling too hot on that one. This next announcement was really cool, if expected. Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment. Basically a sequel to Age of Calamity, where we're going to get to see the prequel to Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom in the form of a Hyrule Warriors game. Age of Calamity ran like absolute crap on the Switch, so I'm really excited to see a Switch 2 version of a Hyrule Warriors game, just to see the power and the speed at which that runs. It's going to be a huge upgrade from the Switch. But yeah, this does look pretty sick. It'll be cool to get some more story details for... I hope they don't do a time travel cop-out like they did in Age of Calamity. Ugh, that was kind of stupid. But this looks cool. Can't wait to play it. Coming out this winter, so I wonder if this is going to hit 2025. We'll have to see. We then got a bunch of third-party ports. I'm just going to run through them real quick. Some of the ones I found notable. Elden Ring, Hades 2, Street Fighter 6 with Amiibo, which is kind of wild. Daemon X Machina, Titanic Scion, which I was shocked by. I was watching the trailer and I thought to myself, is this Daemon X Machina 2? And then it was, which was wild. I will say, as much as I didn't really care for the first Daemon X Machina, had a really weird marketing cycle too back in the day. This does look a lot better than the first one did. I honestly thought the first one looked kind of bad. This one looks really good, to the point where I thought it was like a Monolith Soft game or Astral Chain 2 or something. So I'm interested to hear a little more about this game. Still don't know if I'm going to pick it up. Again, Daemon X Machina wasn't really my thing, but hey, maybe this one will be really good. We got Split Fiction announced, cool add to the Switch 2, Madden, FIFA, 2K all coming, Project 007, which I didn't even know was a thing. Apparently we're getting a James Bond game from the guys who made Hitman, which is going to be awesome. I can't wait for that. Bravely Default is getting a remaster. Yakuza 0 Director's Cut, that's going to be a cool one. Deltarune was here, which was a bit of a surprise. Borderlands 4, Civilization 7, Final Fantasy 7 Remake. There was also some other games that were announced when the stream froze, which was unfortunate timing. I think my main takeaway here was just the sheer number of developers and companies and games that were in this part of the Direct. I mean, Nintendo isn't messing around with their third-party support. They are getting a lot of partners to add games to their system immediately at launch, which is a big deal for them for sure. And obviously, no announcement exemplified that more than the Duskbloods. I think this was the shocker of the Direct, and you could argue it was the biggest announcement at the Direct. A new Fromsoft game exclusive to the Nintendo Switch 2. That is a massive, massive deal for Nintendo. I kind of thought we were leaving the age of third-party exclusives, but I guess not, because Nintendo secured a new Fromsoft game on their new console. And like I said, this is a massive deal for the Switch 2. This is going to make a lot of people pick up this new console. I've never really been a FromSoft guy, and this game seems multiplayer focused, which I guess FromSoft is doing a lot of now. First the new Elden Ring game, and now this. But it is an earth-shattering announcement from Nintendo and FromSoft. Still pretty surprised about that. In the middle of all those third-party games, for some reason, we got GameCube on NSO, which was a pretty fun announcement to see. I believe it only has 3 games at launch, which is pretty ridiculous. I get that these are bigger games than anything else they have on NSO, but it would have been nice to have a few more at launch, Nintendo. We're going to have to wait months until we get a significant amount of GameCube games on Switch 2. All right. The one thing I thought was cool about this was that there are a lot of games coming out soon for GameCube NSO that are super expensive. Chibi Robo, the 2 Pokemon games, the Fire Emblem game, those are all ridiculously expensive if you want to buy them physically. Now they're on NSO, so people have a way to play those games without getting absolutely scalped online, which is very cool, and I'm very glad GameCube is finally coming to NSO. Nintendo then closed the Direct on 2 big first-party announcements. The first one was an absolute shock. Kirby Air Riders coming this year, directed by Masahiro Sakurai. First of all, I'm just happy Sakurai is taking a break from Smash. He's doing something different. It's probably more of a passion project for him, and I'm super excited about that. But also, it's a new Kirby Air Ride, which is unbelievable. In my reaction, I was in disbelief. I thought, there's no way this is a new Kirby Air Ride game, but lo and behold, it is. I cannot wait to see what Sakurai does with Kirby Air Ride in 2025. Like Sakurai with a next-gen console, all these ideas that have just been stuck in his head for 20 years. I think this game is just going to be unbelievable. I can't wait till it comes out. It's coming out this year. That's a big out-of-field hardcore announcement, which I was hoping for at least one of those in this Direct. I thought it was going to be Star Fox, but this is even wilder, and I cannot wait to play this one. And then we got the game that closed out the Direct. Oh my goodness. Donkey Kong Bonanza, a new 3D Donkey Kong for the first time since the N64, and our first new Donkey Kong game, period, in over a decade. Unbelievable announcement. I thought at first it was Banjo because of those eyes on the rocks. It does give off Rare vibes, even though the design is very classic Donkey Kong and kind of goes away from the Rare design. I feel like this game feels very Rare inspired, which is awesome because obviously I have so much love for that era of 3D platformer. It seems like this game is made by the Mario Odyssey team, which I am a little conflicted about. On one hand, This game looks incredible. I love how the terrain is destructible and you can kind of just wreak havoc to defeat enemies and find secrets. The worlds look so vast and vibrant and crazy. But on the downside, it probably means we're not getting 3D Mario for a while, right? Maybe they'll surprise us and we'll have a 3D Mario game for around the time the Mario movie comes out. But honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if we're not getting 3D Mario until year 3 of this system, which, oh my god, 10 years in between 3D Marios if that's the case, which I just don't even want to live in that reality. Hopefully at the June Direct that I think we're going to get, we see 3D Mario and our worries are alleviated. But as it stands, definitely concerned that we didn't see 3D Mario here after waiting 8 years, which again, the longest gap between 3D Marios is the one we are currently in right now. I can't lie and tell you I'm not a little disappointed that we didn't get 3D Mario, but a new Donkey Kong game is super exciting. It looks unbelievable. I know people are freaking out right now. I was freaking out as well. It does look great. Even if it's not 3D Mario, which I was super hoping for, it does look amazing. Well, those are my thoughts on the Switch 2 Direct, and I am feeling conflicted because on one hand, just in terms of the announcements we got, I think this was one of the best Directs of all time, right? We got a brand new Mario Kart, essentially. We didn't know anything about that game. A brand new 3D DK, Kirby Air Ride, Hyrule Warriors, GameCube on NSO, essentially DLC for Mario Party Jamboree and Kirby and the Forgotten Land as well, and the new Fromsoft game exclusive to the Switch 2. That's a lot of announcements. That alone makes it one of Nintendo's best presentations. But on the other hand, this event was paced really weirdly. There was a big glitch in the middle of it that completely froze it, and some of the pricing just really upsets me. $80 games, a pack-in game that they're charging like probably $30 or something for. It's a little bit disheartening after what should have been a slam dunk presentation for Nintendo. And really it was, right? This console is coming out in 2 months. It seemingly has a lot of support from first and third parties, and it seems to be super powerful, but there's just a lot of stuff dragging it down for me that isn't necessarily related to the Direct itself. And I think part of that is the fault of Nintendo's messaging about this system. They didn't tell us anything about price in this Direct, and I get it. You want to focus on the games, you want to focus on the features, but taking a few minutes to just acknowledge the fact that prices are going up for both the console and the games would have been appreciated, right? People were going to get annoyed either way, but I think if you were honest and upfront that prices are increasing and this is just kind of how it is these days, people would understand at least a little bit. And you wouldn't get the stuff you're getting online right now where people are just going crazy and they're seeing other things that Nintendo announced that have nothing to do with their first-party games and linking them together. Like the announcement that there's going to be some games that I think they're called digital cards, where they have a game cartridge, but you have to download the game onto the game cartridge, which first of all isn't the case for Nintendo games. They're going to be on the cartridge like normal. And second of all, has been a thing in video games for a decade. The Switch 1 had physical games that you needed to download the game onto since basically the beginning of its life. People are just taking random information that Nintendo has to give out and spinning it into a complete crazy web, and that's the fault of Nintendo, I think, for not being more clear about this stuff in the presentation. It's causing a lot of confusion, a lot of anger, and I get it. I will say $450 for the console, not too bad. I was kind of worried it was going to be $500. I think $500 with Mario Kart, especially considering it's $80, is a pretty fair price, especially considering how powerful this thing seems to be and the fact that it has a 120Hz HDR display. I think $450 is more than fair. It's the $80 games that I'm a little bit concerned about because that's going to add up, right? You only buy one console, but you buy plenty of games. And look, if there's a $70 digital version of Mario Kart World, I'm just going to lie in that bed and become a digital Nintendo gamer. I'm fine with that, but I'm not sure we're going to get that. And even still, it is kind of disappointing that you have to choose between savings or a physical version of the game. By the way, speaking of physical versions, the box arts look terrible. What happened? I know we want to distinguish between Switch and Switch 2 games, Nintendo, but what are you doing? They look so ugly. They're this bright red. They've got a bright red bar at the top. I mean, what a ugh. The one other difference is that it seems like the art on the covers wraps around the rim, which is interesting. I don't know if I like that or not, though, because the Switch games look so satisfying on the shelf, all in uniform, right? If you put them A to Z, it's very satisfying to see them together. But it could be cool to see the art around the rim on the shelf. I don't know. Again, I might not be buying physical games anymore if they are indeed less than physical games. So who knows? There's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot up in the air right now, and I'm sure we'll get a lot of information about it over the next 2 months. But that is going to do it for my thoughts on the Nintendo Switch 2 Direct. Let me know in the comments below, did you like the Direct? What would you grade it? What was your favorite announcement? Anything you want to tell me about the Switch 2 Direct, leave it in the comments below. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that big fat button. Share this video with a friend who might like it. And with that said, I'll see you guys in the next one.